Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're cleaning up your charts, showing you a couple different strategies you can use to isolate specific indicators and overlays on your charts. That's going to help focus your analysis. Instead of seeing everything at once at volume 10, you're going to use these tricks to see just one thing at a time, whether that's a moving average or a standalone indicator like the MACD or rate of change, anything that you choose. We're gonna do this in Sharp Charts, gonna do this in ACP. Once we jump over to ACP, we're also gonna show you how some of the interactive features built right into your charts over there make it even easier. So lots to cover on the show today. Of course, you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tool, show you around the features, and ultimately help you get more value out of stock charts. That's our mission here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel after that, and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at Stock Charts. It is wonderful to be back with you. We were off last week, so good to be back in the saddle here for another show. Another one where we get to take some things out of my own personal playbook, pull some things out of my own personal toolkit, and show you how you can implement some of those same strategies. So as we mentioned, the theme of today's show, bringing a focus to your charts. We're going to show you how to isolate different parts of the chart, actually break your charts apart into separate chart styles, something I've done for a long time to help me stay focused on just one thing at a time. So you'll be able to actually pull those different indicators out, save them into their own chart style to keep you focused on just one thing at a time. I'm also going to show you how I do this with, in my case, specific moving averages. We're going to show you what I like to call my MA focus chart that allows you to kind of zero in just on specific moving averages. Something I've done for a long time, something I told Dave Keller about. He started doing this as well. It is a great, great tool, kind of a mental exercise you can put yourself through there. We're going to do this in Sharp Charts to start. We're going to jump over to ACP. The very cool thing in ACP is that we have some interactive features over there that make it even easier to do this. You actually don't have to save things into their own chart style. On the fly, you're going to be able to actually sort of zoom in, zero in on just one indicator. So you're going to see how that works. Now, before we get into that, I do want to let everyone know we've got something very, very exciting happening next week here on the Stock Charts TV channel. Larry Williams is going to be doing another special. Some of the most popular specials that we do, some of the most popular shows, videos that we do are always with Larry. His stuff is a huge hit and for good reason. Larry called us up last week. He said, you know, there's a big debate raging in the markets right now. Are we in a new bull market? Are we still stuck in a bear market? Are we in a sideways trend that's just going to keep raging on, keep driving us all nuts? Larry has some thoughts, and he said, I need to share with the people of Stock Charts what I'm seeing. So we're going to be bringing out that new special from Larry Williams exclusive to Stock Charts on Wednesday of next week. That's going to be the 15th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And the twist, this one is for Stock Charts members only. So all you Stock Charts members, we're going to have a special link for you. You'll be able to head over to that link and watch Larry's special starting next Wednesday. This is exclusive for you. If you're not a Stock Charts member, the good news is you can actually sign up for a free trial that will give you access to the special. And of course, you'll also get to play around with all of the premium advanced tools and features, bigger, better charts, things like what we're going to show you on the episode today. So it's really a no-brainer. Sign up for a free trial. You will get access to Larry's special next week. But this one is going to be Stock Charts members only. So StockCharts.com/Larry-Williams is going to be our special link. Stock Charts members starting next Wednesday will be able to head there and check out that new content from Larry. He's got some amazing insights. He kind of gave me a little bit of a preview, so I don't want to spoil anything, but you're definitely going to want to catch what Larry has to say. about this market. So we'll have more details for you as we go, especially in our Chart Watchers newsletter this weekend. If you're not signed up for Chart Watchers, make sure you do that. You can scroll to the bottom of pretty much any Stock Charts page, look for that little sign up box, or go to stockcharts.com/newsletter to sign up for that. We'll have more details though in that newsletter, and of course site banners and lots of things up on the site next week when that special rolls out from Larry. So without further ado, with that out of the way, let's jump over to the site, take a look at the charts. So we're starting here on the Sharp Charts Workbench. Like I mentioned, we'll jump over to ACP after this. But what I want to do actually to start off today's show, we're looking right now at my default chart. So this is the one that I've saved to my account. This is how I watch the markets, individual stocks. This is kind of the first thing for me. If we go over here on the left side of the Sharp Charts Workbench though, we can actually open up our ChartStyles menu. Now, of course, we can access our ChartStyles down at the bottom below the charts as well. But I love to use this menu because it gives you access to all of your saved chart styles plus some predefined ones down at the bottom. The reason that I want to start here is because I want to describe what I've sort of built into my own account and what you can build into yours. So if you look up here at the chart styles menu, you can see that I have a whole bunch of these different chart styles named basic. So I've saved these charts into my own account, and in just one click, I can access any of these charts. Now, I've named it basic for some reason that made sense to me when I initially set this up. But the key is that a number of these are sort of, all of these really are universal. I can use them with pretty much any symbol that I come across. Now, a couple of these do exactly what we're going to talk about on the show today. So a lot of us love to stack indicators, right? We love to create these complex charts that have tons and tons and tons of indicators. I'm a true charting geek. I am a market geek. So I get fascinated by all of these different indicators, but it can make it incredibly difficult to actually figure out what your sort of takeaway from the chart is, right? If you stack your charts with so many indicators, it can be hard to actually figure out what the heck is going on. So the theme of today's show is isolating those indicators so that you're looking at just one thing at a time. That allows you, again, to stay focused on what that single indicator and price are telling you. Again, price is the most important thing. Technical indicators are great, but when you stack those up and you have too many of them on the charts, it can really kind of become pretty cluttered. So what I've done with some of these specific indicators that I want to make sure I have access to, some key indicators that I want to be able to look at, we can actually isolate those on the chart, save that to a chart style. We can still have access to that indicator, still have access to that chart, but we don't have it sort of cluttered up with every other indicator under the sun. So a great example of this is going to be the scooter chart. That's where we're going to start today. You can see I've also done this though with things like rate of change. I've done this with Bollinger Bands. I've done this with parabolic SAR. And I've actually got a few others saved in my account as well. But we're going to start with the scooter chart. So the scooter is a great example of this. This is an indicator that I love. This is our StockCharts technical rank. It's a great way to think about relative strength for stocks and for ETFs as well. The scooter though is something that you can build into your charts, and you could throw it in with all of the other indicators that you're going to have. But what we're going to do with this chart here, we're going to isolate that so that we're looking just at price and at that scooter panel. So on this chart, you can see we've stripped everything else away. We do have a couple of moving averages on here, but we've stripped everything else. We've just got our price panel, and then right up at the top, we've got our scooter line, our scooter indicator. So this allows me to stay focused on just the scooter indicator and price when I pull up this chart style. Instead of having to worry about what everything else is doing, I'm just focused on this one indicator. We can take a look at a couple others. So for instance, I like to do this with rate of change. This is another chart style that I like to use. In this case, we're looking at a 12-period rate of change. We've got our price chart down below. So instead of having rate of change as yet another indicator on my charts, I can stay focused on just what that rate of change indicator is telling me because I've got it sort of isolated in its own chart style. We can do something similar with Bollinger Bands. In this case, we've gone a little crazier and I've actually isolated all of the Bollinger Band indicators. So we've got the Bollinger Bands here themselves, and we've got the %B indicator and the Bollinger Band width indicator as well. But the same kind of concept, instead of having all of these Bollinger Band indicators along with all of the other indicators that we're going to look at, we can isolate those into their own chart style. So if we open this back up, let's jump over to the scooter chart. Let's take a look at how we can actually go ahead and set this up. So down here on the SharpCharts workbench, what I've done, we've got our price charts, we've taken off everything. We do, of course, like I said, have a couple of moving averages on there, but in the indicators section, we've just got that scooter line. Now, in this case, I have done something a little tricky to get sort of two scooter line indicators on there so that I can put some horizontal lines and have a moving average. But if we actually just take this one off, that'll make this a little easier to see. And just so that we can see things really, really clearly, we'll take that overlay off as well. So we'll hit update. Now you can see we just have that scooter line. So down here on the workbench, we've got scooter line selected as our indicator. I've positioned that above the price panel. So you can see in the little position menu, we've selected above. That's going to put it right up at the very top of the chart. And then I've actually adjusted the height on this. So I've set the height at 0.5. What that means is that that scooter panel is going to be half as tall as the main price panel. You can see that this panel up at the top is about half the size of this panel down below. That just gives it a little more focus, makes it a little bit easier to see and a little bit taller. From there, we hit update. We make sure that we've got our indicator panel right up at the top. And then we can come down here and we can add this as a new chart style. Now, in my case, I just got a little error message because I've already saved 50 chart styles, which is the max. But you can add that as a chart style in your account. Give it a custom name, set it as focus or isolated, whatever you want to name that. You can just add that as a chart style. That makes it incredibly easy to pull up this indicator, pull up this chart in just one or two clicks. We've got, again, our chart styles menu down here at the bottom or our chart styles menu over on the left. So when I'm going through different stocks, you saw my default chart. This actually does not have the scooter indicator on it. I do have scooter values up here in the full quote, but I've got sort of my my level 1 view, my default view. And when I want to bring in the scooter indicator, instead of having that there all the time, all I have to do is come down to this menu, open that up and hit basic scooter. That's going to pull up that symbol with that scooter chart right up at the top. So that allows me, again, to just stay focused on what that one indicator is telling me and then go about the rest of my analysis using any other indicators that I might want. Brings a little bit of focus to my analysis. Again, the key is that you're going to want to save these into chart styles. That makes it incredibly easy to pull those up. That is a wonderful feature of StockCharts membership, being able to create these charts and then save it as a chart style so you can come back to all of those settings at a later point. So that's kind of how we can isolate our indicators on our charts. But now I mentioned that we can also do this with overlays. So we can take that same kind of concept, isolating an overlay, bringing focus to that overlay, to the indicator that's overlaid on the price bars. We can do this, for instance, with a moving average or a couple of moving averages. So if we open that menu back up, we can see that I sort of alluded to this earlier. I've got something that I call my moving average focus chart. Now, we touched on this a little bit in the past, but what this chart does, it allows me to stay focused basically on just the moving averages and sort of strips everything else out. Now, in this case, I do have a relative strength line down at the bottom. I really can't get away from that one. But as you can see in the main price panel, what I've done is actually faded out the price bars so that I can barely see them. You can barely see those price bars on this chart. And I've kept the moving averages at full opacity. So when I call this chart my MA focus chart or my moving average focus chart, again, the whole idea is that this is bringing focus, putting all the emphasis right on those moving averages and allowing me to stay truly, truly focused on what those moving averages are doing and what they are telling me. Instead of getting lost in the clutter of a bunch of other indicators or even in the clutter, I hate to say price is clutter, but in the clutter of price, again, I can stay focused on just those moving averages. So when I'm using this, for instance, to judge from a week-to-week basis, to judge the major market indexes, I like to actually use this on things like SPY and MDY, the mid-cap index, SLY, the small-cap index. I like to use this chart style on those major indexes, and I like to focus on the 50 and the 200-day moving average, because that to me represents sort of, for the time frame that I trade, represents the intermediate term trend and the long-term trend. So using this chart allows me to stay focused on, okay, well, what is the intermediate term trend? I can clearly see, in this case with RS, it's going up. And what is the long-term trend? In this case, again, it is also going up here. We can see that 50-day in red and that 200-day in green. So isolating these overlays on my charts really helps me focus on just those particular tools. Now we could do this with Bollinger Bands, we could do this with Parabolic SAR, we could do this with anything that you're gonna put on there, Ichimoku clouds, Keltner channels, any overlay that you wanna use, you could use these tricks to isolate that overlay. How do we do this? Let's take a quick look at the settings. Down here under the chart attributes area, you can see that I've set the opacity for my price bars down at 0.1. So if we set this to 0, the price bars are gonna be totally gone off the chart. If we set this up at 1, they're gonna be fully visible. By setting this at 0.1, we're making those price bars incredibly opaque. So that's how I get those price bars to sort of barely show up on this chart. From there, what we've done, we've got our moving averages on this chart, and I've done the exact opposite with those moving averages. I've set those at an opacity of 1.0, so they are sort of full strength, full color. You can see them really, really clearly. Again, you can do the same thing, set this chart up and then save that as a chart style. It'll make it really easy to access in the future. To show you how easy it is to set up one of these charts, let's actually create one on the fly. We're gonna take off that indicator panel at the bottom. We're gonna hit clear all to pull all of those overlays and indicators off of this chart. So we've got our opacity set at 0.1 on those price bars. And we talked about Bollinger Bands earlier. Let's use Bollinger Bands as a good example. We'll do our default Bollinger Bands here. We'll set that with an opacity of 1.0. And now we can clearly see those Bollinger Bands on this chart. We can still see those price bars sort of thinly displayed behind, but we can sort of really focus on what the Bollinger Bands are telling us on this chart, because we're sort of focusing on that, isolating that tool, if you will. So very, very cool. I love this little trick, especially for moving averages. I find that it's an incredibly helpful way to view your moving averages, really kind of focusing on those moving averages. That's why I call it my MA focus chart. So using some opacity tricks to isolate your overlays and using some setting tricks to isolate your indicators here in Sharp Charts. So with that out of the way, let's jump over to ACP. This takes care of the Sharp Chart side of things. We're gonna jump over to ACP, of course, our interactive charting platform. Take a look at some of the tricks that you can do over there. The same ideas apply, so we're not gonna go through all of this from scratch again, but we're gonna take a look at some very fun things in ACP, some interactive features that sort of let you do this on the fly. So let's jump over to ACP and take a look. All right, my friends, we are over in ACP. Now, if you're not familiar with ACP, stands for Advanced Charting Platform. This is our complement to Sharp Charts. We have two different ways to watch the markets, two primary charting platforms now. And the great thing about ACP, it is fully interactive. It's incredibly dynamic. You can move through time, zoom in, zoom out. You can even move your indicators around on the fly. If you want to move the RSI up, you can do that simply by clicking and dragging right on the chart. So some very, very cool features of ACP. And we are going to take a look at a new one on the show today. So before we do that, let's open up the ChartStyles menu, just sort of walk through some of this stuff. Again, I want to show you quickly how you can do this. As you can see in my account down here, I've got a number of those basic chart styles over here. Similar kinds of ideas, the basic scooter chart, the isolated rate of change chart. We've got our MA focus chart the same kinds of things apply. Now, I do use ChartStyles and ACP. I love both, so I like bouncing actually back and forth between them. Same idea applies though. You set those charts up and then save a chart style. So in one click, we can very easily access, for instance, our isolated scooter chart. Here's that look. We've got our price bars. We've got our scooter chart up above. Really, really easy to set these up, save those as chart styles. We can do the same thing with our MA focus chart. In this case, it's actually even easier to set some of this stuff up. We jump over here into the settings for this chart. We can do that by clicking on the main price panel legend. And down here at the bottom, you see that we have actually complete control over the candlestick settings here in ACP. To drag the opacity around, we just drag this slider in the color picker. That's going to move those around. So I've set the opacity of those candlesticks down nice and low so they kind of get hidden. And if we close that out, we can then jump into any of our different moving averages. And in here, we've got opacity sliders right on there. So we can set those up at 1.0, again, to bring focus to those moving averages. So the exact same concepts apply here in ACP. Again, you can isolate those indicators, isolate those overlays, save those as chart styles, and pull them up very, very easily on the fly. But there are some cool things, some interactive new features that we've added to ACP that allow you to kind of do the same thing without having to even jump over and save those chart styles and pull those up one at a time. What we've actually built into ACP with our last product release that came out at the tail end of 2022, we've built in the ability to sort of zoom in to just one indicator at a time. So when you're in ACP, when you're looking at a chart, let's say you got a chart like this that's got a whole bunch of indicators on it. We've got our scooter line at the bottom. We've got accumulation distribution, on balance volume, RSI. We've got a relative strength line. Lots going on this chart. Well, if we hover over the legend for any of the indicators on this chart, you'll see that we get some different icons. Now we can hover over those legends. We can hit the gear icon to edit this indicator. We can hit the trash can icon to delete this indicator. But there's also a little full screen icon that you can click. So if you've got multiple indicators stacked up on the same chart here in ACP, you hover over a legend. Let's say we wanted to sort of mimic that scooter focus chart. We can hover over that legend, give that full screen icon a click, and that's going to zoom this chart in so that we sort of maximize the scooter indicator panel. We can look at just that one indicator panel and price, very similar to the isolated chart style that we were looking at for the scooter just a moment ago. We can now do this sort of on the fly, maximize that scooter indicator panel, bring some focus just to this one indicator at a time, and then on the fly, we can just minimize that back down, and we're back to our full chart. So you can do this with any of the indicators on your charts in ACP. If we want to focus in on the RSI, just see the price bars and RSI, we can maximize that indicator panel, take a look, give it some thinking, and then minimize that back down when we are ready. So a very, very cool little interactive feature of ACP here. Things like this are sort of what draw me to ACP. I love that interactive kind of dynamic experience. So this is very, very cool. Being able to do something that I've done in Sharp Charts for a long time, but even easier here in ACP, you don't even have to create those chart styles. If you're trying to isolate your indicators, you can just maximize those when you need them, minimize them back down to get back to that full chart. Now, one other thing that we built in here in ACP with your overlays, we talked about that moving average focus chart. That one is still a great one to set up as a chart style so that you can get the sort of faded out price bars and the maximum opacity on those moving averages. So I still love using that trick here in ACP. I do that quite a bit. But one of the other things that we have built into ACP for overlays, for anything that is overlaid on top of the price bars, if you hover over these legends, you'll see that you have that little toggle for visibility. So if you did want to add some overlays to your chart, but not have those there all the time, you can actually set the opacity either high or low, and then sort of toggle those off on the fly. So if we wanted to keep the 50-day moving average on our charts, for instance, but we wanted to shut that off on the fly, we can just toggle that one off with that little eye icon in the legend. If we hit that again, that's going to just bring that right back. So very, very nice being able to actually toggle those overlays on and off on your chart. So for instance, if we wanted to toggle all of these off and just get down to a nice clean chart, it's incredibly easy to do that here in ACP. We can see that we've just removed all of those overlays. They're still on this chart, so they haven't been deleted. We don't have to add those back, but we just kind of temporarily hidden them to stay a little bit more focused on just the price panel. Very, very nice. I love being able to do this. It is a really cool feature. In my case, actually, I use this a lot of times with the 20-day moving average. For me, that's a great indicator when I'm sort of actively trading something, or if I've taken on a new position and I want to make sure that it's really kind of holding that short-term uptrend if I'm long in that position. I like to use the 20-day moving average, but it's not a primary tool. It's not something that I want on all of my charts all the time, always sort of screaming at me. So this type of feature allows me to actually have the 20-day moving average on my charts and then just toggle it on and off when I need it. Really, really cool feature, especially for some of those sort of lesser used moving averages. Or if you've got something like Bollinger Bands that you want to have access to, but you don't necessarily need it all the time, you can toggle that on and off right here in ACP. Very, very cool. So that's going to do it for us on this week's show. Hopefully you've had some fun digging into a couple of these different chart setup ideas with me. Again, isolating those indicators and overlays on your charts to stay focused. We all love to think that we can navigate 7,000 indicators on our charts, but the more that you add, the more cluttered those charts become, and the harder it can be to really sort of make a decision about what to do with that chart, or make a decision about where something is heading. You never want to lose sight of price. And so these kinds of features helping you isolate price and just one indicator or just one overlay at a time can be incredibly helpful, again, for helping focus your analysis. So these are tricks that I use in my own approach. Again, I mentioned, for instance, that moving average focus chart, something that I love to use for indexes to really stay focused on what those different moving averages are telling me about trend over different time frames. You can use this in so many different ways though, and especially with those interactive tricks in ACP, it's gotten even easier to do some of these things on the fly. So very, very fun. Remember, we do this show every Friday. If you're new to Stock Charts in Focus, always digging into something, always having fun, diving into the site, diving into tools and features, and ultimately just trying to help you get more value out of Stock Charts. That's our mission here every Friday. So definitely tune in. I look forward to seeing you again soon for another episode of the show. Again, my name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been wonderful to be with you. Don't forget Larry Williams special coming out next week. Keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a blast hearing from Larry about this very, very interesting market that we have on our hands here. So don't want to miss that. Stock Charts members, look for that link. We'll have it up on the site for you next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget, Larry is going to be on for Stock Charts members. After that, though, we will see you again for another episode of Stock Charts in Focus very soon, next Friday. I hope you all have a great week and a great weekend. And until then, chart on, my friends.